Away from this stretch of Quintana Road for about 4 to 10 hours this afternoon before they cleared the scene and left behind this yellow tarp. Angelito Olvera was one of several people who came to pay their respects today, bringing papier-mâché crosses to mark the spot as a memorial.
I feel very sad for what happened. These people shouldn't have to go through that. There should be a free land to everybody.
It was also a remembrance of a similar incident several years ago when migrants were also abandoned in a trailer.
Hopefully I can gather people together so we can come into the rosary like we did it in 2017 when the 18-wheeler left some families at Walmart.
Sheriff Javier Salazar described the latest scene as heartbreaking.
Traveling in an 18-wheeler and being abandoned out there to die, to exposure, it's a heartbreaking scenario, but again, it just reminds us of why we keep doing what we're doing.
He says this is far from an isolated event.
Every time that we make one of these cases and we rescue people from a house, we stop to think, wow, if we hadn't done something, this is how they end up.
Councilwoman Adriana Rocha Garcia, whose district the tragedy occurred in, says protecting all human lives has to be a priority.
There's a lot of frustration. I'm devastated and sad and heartbroken and angry at the same time that things like this keep happening, but it's going to take all of us working together.
There are 2 vigils planned for this evening, both at 7 o'clock. One at Last Chance Ministries, the other at Pearsall Park. Reporting from the southwest side, Jim Lefkoe, News 4 San Antonio.
All right, I appreciate the updates, Jim. Thank you. Well, the semi-truck in which at least 50 migrants were found dead yesterday was towed from the scene by officials early this morning. The migrants were located Monday night after someone working close by heard calls for help. Officials say 16 people, including 4 children, survived the ordeal. They were hospitalized. 3 people were taken into custody following the grim discovery. A unit from Homeland Security is now in charge of this investigation. Well, as the tragedy was unfolding, we take you inside the early critical moments as first responders were arriving on scene.
What they saw, what they experienced as they tried desperately to save lives.
Ladder 2, respond with other units, making mass casualty incidents.
At least 51 people dead, abandoned in a tractor trailer on San Antonio's southwest side.
So we've got an 18-wheeler, looks to be about 60 people that are inside. Looks like quite a few of them are already deceased.
Paramedics rushing to Quintana Road.
Do you have any backboards or anything that would help us slide the patients off the 18-wheeler? Bring them, please. Even some tarps, salvage covers, anything that would help bring the patients out.
San Antonio Fire Chief Charles Hood describing the massive effort to save lives.
We use approximately about 60 firefighters, 20 fire engines, and 10 medic units.
The medical teams working to transport those who were still alive.
I'm counting right now about 12 that are breathing. We're trying to attempt to take ones that are breathing off of the truck right now.
The patients that we saw were hot to the touch. They were suffering from heat stroke, heat exhaustion.
First responders encountering a horrific scene.
Okay. I believe we could use about 2 or 3 more bodies inside the truck, some more backboards, and I believe we're going to need more medics. So far I have about 1, 2, 3, probably about 6 or 7 more patients that I can see.
With temperatures soaring above 100 degrees, the trailer had no visible working AC units.
We have processed approximately 46 bodies that have been triaged and tagged and declared deceased at this time. Fortunately, we were able to transport 16 people.
Police calling this tragedy the largest mass casualty event in San Antonio history.
We're not supposed to open up a truck and see stacks of bodies in there. None of us come to work imagining that.
In San Antonio, Simone D'Alba.
And more new details now. Neighbors say that road where the migrants were found last night has long been a hotspot for criminal activity. People using the trains or the cover of trees to get around undetected. News 4 San Antonio's Jordan Elder spoke to one area worker who believes she saw the big rig speed by before the migrants were found. Jordan.
Robert, there are a lot of construction firms and junkyards that back up to this road, and business owners tell me they were shocked to see something like this happen here. A sales manager at MG Building Materials says she saw the truck race by at about 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Veronica Aguilar says accidents are common over here, but she found it unusual that the truck was driving so fast with a trailer attached. She says she usually calls and reports these things and feels guilty for not doing so yesterday.
And then I thought to myself, maybe if I would have called it in just for reckless driving or something, they would have found them.
She says she felt sick when she heard the news about what happened. Other businesses and workers in the area say this is a road they travel on often, and they've never seen anything like this. Right here on the road, you can see there's a memorial growing. A lot of people have been bringing crosses, like Jim Lefkoe mentioned, and there's flowers and candles building out here. Even through the rain, a lot of people are coming to visit. We'll keep you updated with more information at 6.
Right. Jordan, thank you. Well, as more and more information comes out about the immigrant truck tragedy, officials are pointing fingers over whose fault this is and what can be done about it. News 4 San Antonio's Matt Roy joining us in studio now with what they're all saying. Matt, good evening.
Now, Simone, this is not the first mass migrant casualty event here in San Antonio, but it is the latest one that's causing legislators and officials to say enough is enough.
This is horrific. We should all be frustrated. We should all be outraged.
That the tone of people on both sides of the aisle, as at least 51 undocumented migrants were found dead in a tractor trailer Monday evening. Some, like former Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Mark Morgan, blaming the president.
When are we going to take our outrage to Congress, to Secretary Marcus and the Biden administration to say, stop your open border policies?
Democrats taking a different approach.
If we had an open border where everybody was just welcomed in, why would these people have to get in the back of a tractor trailer when it's 120 degrees inside and risk their lives to be able to come into the United States?
Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar says he's reached out multiple times to the Biden administration for more resources and help in the border crisis.
This is what it looks like when government just doesn't do enough, or when we do the wrong thing.
Congressman Henry Cuellar says Congress needs to do more, and Castro agrees.
Congress has to finally pass comprehensive immigration reform to make sure that there's a safe and orderly way for people to both apply for asylum or to try to migrate to the United States if that's what they're trying to do.
Morgan says congressional members like Castro and Cuellar must speak out more strongly before deaths keep piling up.
Enough is enough. Every congressional member should be outraged and yelling from the steps of the Capitol.
I'd love to see more involvement from D.C. on this topic because people are dying right here on my county streets, and it's a frustrating thing.
Now, we did reach out to local Republican congressmen as well as your 2 U.S. senators, but none were available for comment today. In the studio, I'm Matt Roy, News 4 San Antonio.
Thank you, Matt. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden taking to Twitter, writing, quote, "Yesterday's loss of life in San Antonio is horrifying. My prayers are with those who lost their lives, their loved ones, and those still fighting for their lives. My administration will continue to do everything possible to stop criminal smugglers from exploiting migrants."
Special visas that are sometimes issued to crime victims, especially if it's a human smuggling or sex trafficking case. Attorney Michael Morgan specializes in complex immigration cases. He says a trafficking visa, sometimes called a T visa, is often provided to victims who cooperate with the investigation of the truck driver or others in a trafficking ring. It applies if the victim is held hostage, forced to work for their release, or sexually assaulted by the smugglers.
Ultimately, because law enforcement officials need assistance, they need assistance from people with information, and those who are victimized have that information, and if they assist law enforcement has an interest in assisting them.
The visas can allow them to stay and work in the U.S. for 4 years and waive their immigration violations. There's also a second type of visa that can be issued to victims or witnesses of violent crime, even if it doesn't involve trafficking.
Ultimately, because law enforcement officials need assistance, they need assistance from people with information, and those who are victimized have that information, and if they assist law enforcement has an interest in assisting them.
There's also a second type of visa that can be issued by victims or witnesses of violent crimes. Even if it doesn't involve trafficking, the visas can allow them to work and stay in the U.S. for 4 years and waive their immigration violations. Morgan says if those visas are not extended to the victims in this case, they might have to appear in immigration court to apply for asylum like many others and be subject to removal from the U.S.